Welcome, everybody, to the show. Mario Vetanze will be joining us shortly. We're going to do something different this time around. We're going to take some callers. First caller, state your name.
Yeah, this is Mike. Is this altitude adjustment?
No, this is Patrick. All right, weird caller. Caller number 2.
First time caller. Is this altitude adjustment?
No, this is Patrick. Thank you so much. God damn it. Caller number 3. What do you have to say about the Broncos? Caller number 3. Hello. Coach, you're on with Coach Pat. Caller number 3.
Are you there?
Hi, is this altitude adjustment?
No, this is Patrick. Jesus.
Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup. I hit the stage and leave with money that's a stick up.
Worst bit of all.
Patrick, the name of the show is Altitude Adjustment.
Worst bit.
And
of
here
all
we are.
Time. Best bit of all time. Shout out to Mike and Bree and Kenny. That was great.
Yeah, appreciate you guys all for doing that. That was maybe our best cold open of all time. I have another fun segment, Pat. You know, we teased it last time, and people didn't think that I was serious, but I never joke about good segments, Pat. Now, as we've discussed ad nauseum on the show, we're going to do this. As we've discussed ad nauseum on the show, especially during Engage 8, there were or are holes on this Broncos roster that we need to fill.
Yeah.
So the name of our brand new segment here on Altitude Adjustment is, Pat, Fill that hole.
God,
and of course, for anybody with their minds in the gutter, we are talking about
roster holes.
And if you think that there's anything else involved with it, then you honestly have to get your mind out of the gutter. Pat and I are going to fill all the holes. And there's a lot. But mark my words, Pat, you and I, we're going to fill them together at the same time. The first hole that we are going to fill this evening is the running back position. I think it's well documented. I don't know. Bree, we love you. We just what did we say? I have no idea what the problem is. Listen, Bree is HR in LTB, and quite frankly, she does a terrible job because Pat and I get away with pretty much anything that we want. Again, Pat and I don't see a problem with this, Pat. You and I are simultaneously filling holes.
Yeah. Look, everybody dreams of going to France, right? Everybody dreams of seeing the Eiffel Tower. Okay, and we're just doing
it's beautiful.
We're just doing it on this show with the Broncos roster. We're just being the Eiffel Tower
and
here.
David gets it. David, much like everybody else here, loves watching Pat and I fill holes. That's it. Yeah. And LTB Muse is right. Yeah, worst PR in history. Yes, Bree. Yes.
Not gonna be allowed
I think we've derailed enough. This is great. Our beloved Zach Seegers, who I'm pretty sure is supposed to be doing radio currently, wanted to chime in. Thanks. We love your less chaotic show as well, Zach. If we can get back to the matter at hand, Pat and I are trying to fill holes. Something that we are incredibly good at, and so we are applying that skill set to our beloved Denver Broncos. So, Pat, the first hole that we are going to fill, it's a big one. Now, I know Nate Tice said that the Broncos had really good running backs or a really good running game, but quite frankly, as we've established, he doesn't watch the games. He clearly just looks at the box score or some advanced analytics that tries to trick you into thinking that the Broncos had good running backs. They didn't. Javonte never was able to obtain that level of rookie year Javonte, and it was a real shame. Jaleel McLaughlin is fun at times. He had some good moments, but he's not a guy that you can lean on. And Audric Estime, was so good that he was benched for a dude that hadn't played since week 4 in a playoff game in the freezing cold. I don't want that to be, a knock on Audric Estime. I think that he can be really good, but I also don't think that he's the bell cow a lot of Bronco fans think that he is. So with all of that in mind, and see, Bree is the one being gross now, Pat. Need a whole counter? I don't know if that's a running back joke
my God.
or just like a disgusting comment. But Bree, you need to get a hang of yourself. Get off our show. Pat, how are you filling the holes at the running back position? This is going really well.
This is going fantastic. We should realistically do this every week. Look,
maybe we will.
Maybe we will. It's what it's going to come down to is I think we talked a little bit about this with Nate Jackson. Was Sean Payton has to figure out like what his identity is going to be in the run game for this next season, and to point out the analytics that Nate Tyson and all those other people were talking about was the Broncos' success rate in the run game, which their team success rate, I think when you take out the quarterback runs, was like 15th, like very middle of the pack. But what does that mean? What does the success rate mean? Because Javonte's individual success rate was like the second worst in the league, and we've talked about that. But it's what it's going to have to come down to is how is Sean Payton going to execute his run game plan next season? The offensive line is fine where it's at. Yeah, there's maybe one place that they could upgrade, but like for the most part, this is a pretty decent run blocking team. I think there's some things that they need to fix as far as like schematics and aiming points and stuff like that. But all in all, the blocking isn't the problem. The issue is that the backs that they have just simply aren't good enough. I think Audric Estime showed a little bit of flash, like you said, but he's not going to be that like 30 carry a game guy, right? Like he's not going to be a guy that you're just going to force feed a ton of carries to. Jaleel McLaughlin did a fine job doing what he was able to do this season in specific situations. But is he a guy that you're going to give 20 plus carries to a game? Probably not. And then Javonte just never was the same, right? So what are we going to be looking at with this run game next season? I think we're going to see a little bit. I don't feel like Sean Payton is going to change much. I think it's going to be this kind of healthy mix of zone and gap, which it should be a little bit more zone than gap, depending on what type of running back they get. I think we're going to see running back taken early in the draft, probably not in the first round, but probably second round. Right? Second round would probably be a good spot to get a running back, right? And any one of those guys that's going to be in that area is going to be a decently good zone guy and a decently good gap guy. So it's going to be their like main back. But I think that to fill this hole, it's going to have to be a free agent signing, so a veteran, and it's going to have to be a rookie. What other characteristics are they looking for?
They've got a double dip, right? Can we agree on that?
Yeah, I think so. And I was listening to LTB last night with Frankie and Jacob, which if you haven't listened to that, please go do. Because
they're doing a fantastic job at the Senior Bowl, just absolutely crushing the coverage.
But like, what are the types of backs that they're going to be looking for, Mario? Well, I'll tell you, Mario. Tell me, Pat. They're going to be looking for a back who can take the majority of those like main carries on first and second down, right? We all know that Sean Payton was trying to get Josh Jacobs last year, which, hey, Josh Jacobs, a room with Josh Jacobs, Javonte, and Audric and Jaleel, I'm not mad at. I'm not mad at that.
It would be fine.
They would have been fine. So going to be looking for a guy who can probably take the majority of the snaps. But you're also going to be looking for someone who is a true receiving threat out of the backfield. No disrespect to Jaleel McLaughlin, but I want a running back who can run option routes out of the backfield. I want a running back who can run Texas routes out of the backfield. I want a running back who can get into the flat with a sense of urgency to create mismatch opportunities for wide receivers in the flat and in the hook zones, because that's what a good threat out of the backfield would do. So what are the types
swing
of
passes aren't enough for you?
No, it's not enough. You got to have the complete package, right, in the room. So there's a couple.
You want to fill a hole, you have to have the complete package. Everybody knows that.
You got to have a big package to fill this hole, right? So the first back that I have on this list is one that I've heard Robbie talk about as well for the receiving part. And that's Ty Johnson. He's a veteran. He's been with a playoff program with the Bills. I think that he's someone that could provide a little more route running ability out of the backfield. He did a really good job this year, over 300 yards through the air out of the backfield. My second guy, Mario, is Aaron Jones. I saw somebody say Aaron Jones. That would be the veteran. Like that's the one that you feel comfortable with giving the majority of the carries throughout the game. You can use him in a multitude of ways. He's been in all types of offenses, the wide zone offense, in Green Bay and in Minnesota. But he is someone that you can also use as a receiving back. They need backs that can really execute the screen game fantastically. I feel like Aaron Jones can definitely be one of those dudes. Solid runner. He is going to be over 30. He's going to be 32 this next season. So yeah, 1-year deal. Makes $5-6 million. Yeah,
not going to cost you a lot.
Now, what I will say, because Javonte is 25, if for some reason the free agent market doesn't go your way, Aaron Jones gets a bigger offer somewhere else and takes it, whatever. And I wouldn't hate it if they brought Javonte back, but I'm not going to give him a ton of carries. Like, it would be a min deal. Like that would be it, only because he's the youngest. He's the youngest out of this crop of free agents. Like, everyone else is 27, 28, 29 years old. They're pushing 30. I
think he played like the second or third highest percentage of snaps out of all the free agent running backs, which is crazy.
52%, right? Which is insane. And to have the level of production that he had is not great. But if all else fails, if there's nothing left on the market, sure, why not? Like, he's a good pass pro back. He did get a ton of targets out of the backfield, so they're trying to force feed him all these targets, maybe in a way to like get him out of here. Like, some other team pay this guy, right? I've got the binky. Sorry.
He had the second most targets on the team. I think he had the second most targets on the team.
And like,
you can't.
He was like third in targets in the whole league for running backs, which is nuts. But I would only bring him back.
He ain't that guy.
He's just, and it sucks, right? Like, it sucks. He's not that guy anymore. My rookie, my last guy, my rookie that I would bring into this equation. I've seen him all over, like, posted all over Twitter.
The guy.
Yes, the guy. I know that there's a ton of people that really, really want this dude in Broncos country, and I agree with you. Is he going to be there for us when we want him? I don't know. And that's Travion Henderson from the Ohio State University. Listen, not only is this guy a national champion, but he is scheme versatile, ran a little more gap than zone this year, but for the majority of his career, he's been more of a zone than gap guy. But had the second most yards in his career this year. He had like 1,200 yards his first season. Then it went down to 500, 900, and then this season over 1,000 yards rushing, but more gap than zone. He is a great receiving threat, as we saw. Solid after contact, 4.43 yards after contact, which was fourth in NCAA football, fourth in FBS, minimum 75 attempts. 21 designed runs of 15 or more yards, 9th in college football, 7th in breakaway percentage, 11th in receiving yards, big screen threat. Pass pro is amazing. Absolutely love it. I love the fit. Like, I think that he would be an explosive player. Didn't fumble the ball at all this year, which is awesome. And man, the speed, the burst, God damn, love me some Trevion Henderson. I do love the other back as well. Don't get it twisted. But I can only pick 3 for this experiment. So those are my 3 guys to fill that hole. Mario, who are you filling that hole with? What 3?
Yeah, before you filled the hole magnificently. Few people can fill a hole better than you, Patrick. Before I fill the hole, I first want to make sure that everybody is familiar with the hole. I feel like sometimes the hole itself doesn't get talked about enough. Like, we don't pay enough attention to the actual hole. We just go filling it. And that's not a good approach when it comes to filling a hole. So if we're looking over the Broncos rushing statistics, first and foremost, have not had a 1,000-yard rusher since the great Philip Lindsay. We love you, Phil, forever and ever.
Oh,
that's how long it's been. They tried to force feed Melvin Gordon to get to 1,000 yards. He fell short twice. And I want to put this into perspective, okay? Rushing for 1,000 yards in the NFL now, not a big deal. I think you have to average like just over 60 yards per game to get to that mark. That should be
17 games
obtainable. In 17 games, like, that should not be a difficult thing to accomplish. So to put it into perspective, like how gaping this hole is and why it needs so much attention, Javonte Williams, 513 yards, averaged 30 yards per game, 4 rushing touchdowns. Abysmal for your running back one. And I would wager to say, Pat, and again, I so wish Javonte could have made that leap. And I think a lot of Broncos country, I think will be upset, but they'll understand why he's gone. Because they were just chasing something that's no longer there, right?
Yeah.
The old Javonte, unfortunately, is gone. And if he has that kind of success elsewhere, then more power to him. But over the last season should have been his getting back season. This was supposed to be his I'm back season, and he wasn't back. Jaleel McLaughlin finished with just under 500 yards, 496. That's 31 per game because he played 16 games instead of 17. He averaged 4.4 yards a carry. So again, not bad. And Jaleel's the only guy in that room that kind of has that breakaway mentality and that capability, but we've never seen it. We never saw him rip up. His longest rush of the year was 21 yards. So it's you have a guy in there for explosive runs. It's not good enough. Bo Nix was their 3rd leading rusher with 430 yards, 4 touchdowns. We had the same amount of touchdowns as Javonte. Averaged 4.7 yards per carry for whatever that's worth. Most of it was scrambling, and the average is going to be thrown off because there's quarterback sneaks in there. But your quarterback should not almost be your leading rusher.
No,
it can't happen. No. So now that we are familiar with the hole, Pat, let's go about filling it.
Ooh,
the first name that I have, the first name that I have on this list. It's not a guy that I'm necessarily psyched about, and I saw him brought up earlier in the chat. It's Rico Dowdle, and first, mostly it's because you had Ty Johnson and Aaron Jones, which I agree with. I think as a veteran presence, I like that. I thought Dowdle looked good enough with the Cowboys when they actually committed to the run, but their team was a bit of a mess this year. I think if you bring Dowdle in, I don't think he's going to command that big of a salary. In fact, maybe you can convince him to take a 1-year prove-it deal because he hasn't necessarily proved it. But I want to preface it by saying, you're not signing Dowdle to be the guy. You're signing him to be a piece of how you're filling this hole. The guy that you want is in the draft. So regardless of the free agent running back you take, if they even end up signing one, Pat, he's not the guy. We're giving you names that we think that they should target to help bolster that room. And even though it's a low bar, Rico Dowdle in that room, currently as it is right now, would be the best running back on the roster. And that is not a ringing endorsement of Rico Dowdle. That is an indictment on our running back room. Now, the guys that I want them to target in the draft, like the dudes, first and foremost, Omari and Hampton. And before people start helmet scouting and telling me that we shouldn't take Omari and Hampton because he went to North Carolina and Javonte went to North Carolina, and why do we want another Javonte? Omari and Hampton is different. And if it wasn't for Ashton Genty having a historically good year, more people would be talking about Omari and Hampton. He's great catching the ball out of the backfield, fantastic contact balance, rarely gets pulled down by arm tackles. Mm-hmm. And he does remind me a little bit of like Javonte coming out, but he has more juice. Yeah. He's got that breakaway mentality. And real quick, David said Caleb Johnson. Love Caleb Johnson as well. I wanted to spread it out a little bit. The other running back that I wanted to mention, maybe someone they can get in the third or fourth round, someone who's kind of under the radar, but he's having a really good Senior Bowl right now, is Brashard Smith out of SMU. Maybe one of the best pass-catching backs in this draft. Love it. And it's more of a value guy. So if you don't want to take a first-round running back, which with their picks you would likely have to do to land in Omari and Hampton, I don't know if I'm that sold on him. I think Genty's the only guy that you're considering at 20. But if we're talking about a trade back situation and you get kind of in like the mid to late 20s or even into the early 30s, then I can be swayed to take Omari and Hampton in the first round. So that's why I wanted to give you a Brashard Smith. You know, it's like if Travion Henderson is there in the second round, Pat, I think that's absolutely the move. I think 100% you run to the podium and you say, thank you, NFL, for all of you passing on Travion Henderson so he could fall to Sean Payton. If that does not materialize, for your value, like talking about bang for your buck, if Brashard Smith is going in the third or fourth round, which I think is roughly where he's projected right now, I think he's the perfect back for like what Sean Payton wants to do. First of all, he's good in pass pro, and he can get better. Like he's a willing pass blocker. He's got the body for it. He's an excellent pass catcher out of the backfield. You listed all the routes that you want your running back to run out of the backfield. He does it all. He has incredible vision for what he does, really good contact balance, and a guy that I think will start creeping up the draft boards as this process continues.
Love to see it. I think there's like this draft class for running backs is so I think it's way deeper than a lot of people realize. I think going into this draft process, the vast majority would have said like, oh, there's only like a couple good backs in this class, and they would have listed like
deep. It's top heavy but deep.
Yeah, there's not a ton of elite talent, but there's a bunch of guys that can help you. I saw somebody on Twitter say, that someone would be like this year's Bucky Irving, and think about Bucky Irving, right? Think about like this was.
I never don't think about Bucky Irving.
I know, man. He would have looked great in a Broncos uniform.
He would have looked a lot better than Troy Franklin in a Broncos uniform. I'll tell you that much.
Wow, hey, we'll fill that hole in a different episode. But this was a guy that like a lot of people overlooked because he didn't carry the majority of the weight at Oregon. Size concerns. A lot of people thought he would be like a scat back receiving type guy. No, this guy can run between the tackles. You feel like these smaller, compact guys that are coming out, and there's a lot of them. I feel like there's quite a few in this class. These guys are gonna be a problem. They're gonna be a problem in the NFL in the next few years, right? So. Are we going to find that guy in the fourth round? I hope they double dip. If you don't sign a free agent, I hope you double dip, and I hope you fill that. You fill that hole in the draft if you need to. Like I said, bring back Javonte on like a minimum deal, a camp deal if you have to, just to have another body in camp and give him a look. But like, man, like there's so much quality in this class that Sean Payton could find somebody to throw in the offense. He could find somebody to replace Jaleel and say, like, look, like you've been great, but we're gonna push you a little bit, right?
So yeah, David, to that end, like that's what Pat is saying. Like, yeah, I think that you do have someone come in and compete with Jaleel.
Yep.
And again, like I've been over this running back class. There are arguably about 12 to 13 guys in this running back class who would come in to this facility and be in that room, and they would be the best running back in that room.
Yeah.
And again, that is an indictment on this room. So, David, you're talking about like a day 3 guy. There are guys, like RB 17, 18 on my board currently. A guy like Bajil Tutton out of Virginia Tech. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. It's spelled really weird. He's like a better version of Jaleel McLaughlin to me. Dealt with some injuries and fell off a little bit towards the end of the season, but he's got like more burst and is a more decisive runner than Jaleel. But they're similar backs, except Tutton is more complete. So, and that's just like one guy off the top of my head. So yeah, I think if you don't land a free agent running back, you get a guy in the second or third round, like preferably day 2, Pat. Because I think I think we can agree, like after Genty, Hampton, and Johnson, it's like Genty's in a class by himself. Then there's a small drop-off. You have Hampton and Johnson, and then I think there's another little bit of a drop-off, and then you kind of have the rest of these guys. And I think TreVeyon Henderson throughout this process, Pat, is going to start kind of climbing up. So he's my RB4 right now, but if he has a good combine and he shows that he can catch the ball and he shows that speed, like he should run like somebody low 4.4s, even high 4.3s.
Somebody said Ollie Gordon. I'm a pass. I'm a pass on Ollie Gordon.
Sorry, TW.
I know. I'm sorry.
What did this last year just kind of make you disillusioned towards Ollie Gordon?
That's the off.
He was on a bad team, Pat. He was on a real bad team.
For me, mostly, it was the drunk driving thing. That was it. That did it for me. Like,
Dak, here's the thing about DJ Giddens. Here's the thing about DJ Giddens. Go watch any of his highlights that weren't against CU. That was Shiloh Sanders' first game back. And honestly, Shiloh Sanders was so bad in that game, specifically trying to tackle DJ Giddens, that I think he took himself out of draft possibility. Like, he is going to be a UDFA. The fact that he's having a bad Senior Bowl is not helping. But all I'm asking Dak is, like, go see what he did outside of that game. Pedestrian. Yeah. He's fine. Like, he's solid. I'm not terribly high on him.
Nobody's mentioned our boy yet. The Rocket. Nobody's mentioned it.
Oh, we haven't talked about the Rocket.
That dude.
Should we let him know about the Rocket?
Man, that dude's gonna be a problem. Like, if the Broncos sign Shiloh as an undrafted free agent, I'm boycotting the team. We're not having a show next year. I'll just sit here the whole damn time.
We'll just look at you like this.
Hey, a dude that big should not be able to move that fast. That's all I'm saying. And he's a guy who did have one of those bad knee injuries and came back to prove himself. Could have come out in the draft. Didn't, stayed, got hurt, came back to prove himself, and has done a pretty good job at it. Like, I don't think, like, that's a guy that you get maybe round 6, round 7. If he's still there on the board, even if he falls because of injury concerns or whatever, and he somehow ends up as a UDFA, I'm throwing in an offer. I'm bringing him
just in case anybody is unaware of who we're talking about. It's
Raheem
Rocket Sanders. Started at Arkansas, moved over to South Carolina.
Yep.
He's very similar, like
6 foot
in terms of skill set. He's a lot like Braylon Allen. Remember the freak of nature that Braylon Allen was last year?
Yeah, except
that's kind of how Rocket Sanders is. Yeah. That obviously the age is different. But in terms of like size and speed, like you said, Sanders is like 6'2", 230-ish, and he runs I think he's projected to run in the 4.3s. At the worst, I think
4.4.
it'll be low 4.4s.
4.44.
So that
I
is,
think.
and again, like that's another guy that would come into this room and Pat probably be the best running back in that room currently. And he's pretty far down the list. Like he's a guy that should be there 5th or 6th round. Now, he also strikes me as the kind of guy like an Isaac Guerrero who has a really good combine because he's just a freak of nature. And so maybe a team takes him in like the 3rd or 4th round betting on his skill set, depending on like how the combine goes. If he throws up insane numbers, then maybe he goes a little bit sooner. But this is kind of what we're talking about. And this is why we're pushing the agenda of you need to double dip. Would we want a veteran running back? Yeah, of course. And there's, again, only a couple of guys that I think we should really consider adding in free agency because this is just a dog poo free agency class for running backs this year. The free agency class for running backs was last year, so it's cyclical. This is going to be the worst free agent running back class in a really long time. So I think you take a running back in the 2nd, whether it's an Omarion Hampton or a Travion Henderson, someone like that. You come back in the 5th or 6th with like any of these guys that we are mentioning, and all of a sudden you have completely revamped that running back room and done what, Pat?
Fill that hole. Yeah,
exactly.
I see Jordan James. I see Jordan James mentioned as well. Let's go.
Dog. Yeah. Dog. Oh, I'm sorry. Really quick before we transition to the next hole, because you got to make sure that you fill all the holes. Well, and we will do that. We're not going to fill all the holes in 1 hour because they need more time than that. Okay. This takes a little bit of finesse. So we will fill one more hole tonight, and then we will fill some more holes. We will fill some more holes next week. And we're just going to get into the habit of filling holes. But one thing I did want to mention, a tweet that I had sent out, Pat, we'll address this later. I wanted to hear some of the craziest, hottest, worst takes that Broncos country has heard. And I wanted to discuss some of it.
Oh, my God.
Maybe the worst one that I heard, and I can't remember where I heard it. I think it was someone that talks about the Broncos occasionally, was pushing for this team to sign Nick Chubb. If you are signing 2021 Nick Chubb, if you're signing 2018 Nick Chubb,
absolutely.
Yes. Take my money. 100%. But you want to sit there knowing what you just witnessed from Javonte Williams for the last 2 seasons, who is half a decade younger than Nick Chubb. You as a Broncos fan saw Nick Chubb live and in living color on a Thursday night game who did so poorly, he got benched. He got put on the bench because he was so wildly ineffective, and that was not the only time that he was benched. If you have a problem with the lack of explosiveness and the inability to hit the hole and the inability to break tackles that you saw out of Javonte, what in the fuck are you thinking wanting Nick Chubb on this team? And I like Nick Chubb. He is one of my favorite running backs from the era. He's not Nick Chubb anymore. He's Nick Flaccid, okay? So keep Nick Chubb away from my team. And if you hear somebody talking about wanting to sign Nick Chubb, say them to their face, you're not very smart because he does not raise the roof of this room. He brings it down. He doesn't fill the hole. You would have to tie a stick to him and shove him in that hole to get anything out of him. Done.
Jesus. I think that that's an awful idea. like if we want to sign a free agent, running back, like there's so many better options out there that will actually give you. And like you said, Nick Chubb was that dude, and like what he went through
was that dude.
What he went through, like for him to come back. Even from that first one, like the first really bad one,
his leg bent the wrong way 2 different times.
For him to come back from that was awesome. Like it was great. Like it was really, really cool to see. But man, like this, like no disrespect to dude, but bro, he's getting up there in age, number one. Number two,
Hang him up.
like all of the injuries that he's had, and that's the dude that you say is going to transform the run game. And and I said this in the group chat about a different free agent that I keep seeing Broncos country hound for, and I'm like, this guy has. Are we just forgetting that these guys have suffered devastating knee injuries and they're not the same anymore? Like, are we throwing that out? Like, and we're just looking at let me pull up who the free agents are. Oh, Nick Chubb is fucking third on the list. Perfect. Yeah, Nick Chubb. Have we watched Nick Chubb? Like, because it's been hard. He's missed 2 whole seasons of football. And like he keeps getting hurt and he keeps going through these injuries. I love Nick Chubb's game, what it was, but this is not the same dude. This team needs something different. They need to break away from that norm of guys who like had these devastating injuries and just aren't the same player anymore. And it's no disrespect. Like some dudes can come back and have a really successful time. Oh my God. Joy Taylor just joined the chat. I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
Ruined.
Muse, do the thing. So it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like I would understand it if it was like a cheap contract and they just want to bring him in, but like that's the guy that you're gonna give all the carries. That's the guy that you're going to expect to last 17 games. Oh, well, our training staff and blah, blah, blah. It does not matter. It does not matter because all it takes is one
just
play.
Magically fix a knee that was bent the wrong way.
All it takes is one play for that to just go right out the window. So love Nick Chubb as a dude. He was awesome. He was really cool. His family's super cool. But like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna throw money in this running back market, where also remember the market value is probably going to go up because Saquon, because King Henry. Now, are these guys at that level? No, they're not.
But they're still revolutionizing. Revolutionizing, but they're changing the narrative.
James Cook,
it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder to get running backs on a discount now than it ever was.
So are you going to pay Nick Chubb the same amount of money that you would pay Aaron Jones? $5-6 million with that injury history? I mean, Aaron Jones doesn't have, I'm just saying. It doesn't make sense. And for you to like push that narrative, please.
It's asinine. Yeah.
Like considering the things that you've been through as well as a human being, like, come on, man. Let's get over it.
I've been told that ACL injuries are completely debilitating. We have another hole to fill, Pat. Now that we have,
filling that hole.
now that we have filled that first hole, apparently that glitched. I apologize. It's Zach Seeger's fault. He's the IT guy. It just said fill that hole, pretty much, in big, pretty letters. We have another hole to fill because, again, we want to address all of the holes that need to be filled, okay? And again, we're not going to fill them all in one night. You gotta take your time with this, okay?
Whoa.
But the next hole that we are going to fill, Pat, arguably just as big as the running back hole. Now, it's not as sexy. It's not gonna get the kind of attention that maybe it deserves. But the tight end hole is really a hole that you need to focus on. Because the tight end in Denver this past year really looked more like a loose end, okay? And you cannot have that when you are trying to fill a hole. So, Patrick, how do the Broncos fill that hole of a tight end?
Oh, wow.
Dude.
This is the best. This is the best bit.
What?
Well, like you did,
Best.
like it, the tight end hole. Hilarious. Oh God. How do we even
I
do the
was
show
waiting
from
for
now?
that all night.
God. Okay, so like you did with the running back position, like we have to understand why we need to fill this hole. Okay, why do we need to fill this tight end hole? Uh, look,
Can't breathe.
God damn it, Dak. The show has gone completely off the rails. Sean Payton's offense definitely requires tight ends that can block, that can run combo routes, and that can help in the screen game as well. And I just don't think that any of these dudes on the roster complete that whole thing, right? He doesn't have the Jimmy Graham type of tight end, like the vertical threat. Jimmy Graham, awful blocker, right? But what was his value? His value was in his ability to run routes downfield, kill the seams, which Drew Brees absolutely loved, and be an end zone threat, right? Those that's the archetype for the move or U tight end that Sean Payton would use. Is also a guy who can help in the screen game. I've seen a couple videos, even one that Frankie posted with Adam Troutman successfully running the screen. So maybe a little bit past his days, but I think that there's definitely a type of tight end that they need to get. I think that the only really like complete tight ends that I feel like are in this draft for the Broncos are Tyler Warren and the other guy that I'm going to talk about. But as far as free agent signings, I think Juwan Johnson makes a ton of sense. Former wide receiver at Oregon, changed to tight end.
You know, Sean Payton loves the Saints, man.
New Orleans guy.
They come marching in.
But understands the offense well, can find space well, great receiving threat, pretty good blocker.
He was their leading receiver this year as well, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, granted, they had a lot of injuries, but he was their leading receiver.
Yeah. What's the other one that I said? So yeah, Juwan Johnson is one of those dudes. But I feel like if they're looking for that complete type of tight end, it's Loveland. Outside of Warren, it's Loveland for me. He's a very willing blocker, still growing in that aspect. I feel like him getting into the NFL will kind of help. He's going to beef up a little bit, but he's a willing blocker. But this dude is a fantastic route runner, super smooth, can definitely help in the screen game as well, can definitely help. So we talk about combo routes, right? Like what are combo routes for a tight end? Well, that's where the tight end and the receiver who is on that side are working in unison. So routes like smash or concepts like smash, concepts like drive, concepts like, there's pivot, there's a bunch of combinations where the tight end is supposed to be the one clearing space, right? Or the tight end is supposed to be taking the attention away from the safety. So Loveland can absolutely be that dude, would be a mismatch problem, would be able to create after the catch as well. That's something that they've desperately needed from their tight ends for a while now. Dulcich just was not that guy. So Loveland would be an awesome option. The other one that I would say, my last dude to fill this hole, is one that Bo Nix is very familiar with. He's down at the Senior Bowl right now. Terrence Ferguson from Oregon. I know I've said it a couple times on the show, but listen, this guy, in Sean Payton's offense, Drew Brees always had somebody that he knew he could go to on third down and medium, right? Which we're in a lot of those situations this year, Mario. We're in a lot of those situations. And I found myself during those situations wondering, God, they've got two tight ends in the game, and they're using both of them to block. That doesn't seem very efficient. He needs a tight end who he knows he can trust on third down, and he can find in those situations, and he knows he's going to be able to convert. And Ferguson has that relationship with him. they understand each other. They would understand each other in this offense really well. He's a guy who's always finding the sticks. He can make all the catches. He can also block, so you can use him in those 2 tight end sets. No more like showing your cards with your personnel takes where, oh shit, we've got fucking Lucas Kroll and Nate Adkins in the game. Yeah, this is probably a pass. Like that's what that is. Lucas Kroll's spread out wide. Okay, it's a pass, guys. Like we know. So
where would you get? Where are you thinking you're going to get Ferguson? Real quick, Pat.
It's tough, man. Like I hate putting grades like this because it's so hard.
It's so early in the process.
It's a fucking crapshoot too. I would say like lower end 4th, 5th round. I think is where his value is because there's a ton of there. This is a deeper tight end class as well. So that also helps push other guys down the line. And with all the offensive linemen who are showing out at the Senior Bowl right now, that's a good thing. That's a really, really good thing. I saw Josh Connerly, top 15 hype.
Oh my.
Tyler Warren at 20. I'd absolutely take it. But Mario, those are my 3 guys.
Fantastic.
Those are my 3 guys.
And you're right. And I think we would be remiss, of course, if we didn't mention Tyler Warren. He's the best tight end in this class. I don't think that it's remotely close. There are going to be comparisons to Brock Bowers because of how Penn State used him. He's not Brock Bowers, but he's very good. Like he's a dog. He's just a really good football player.
Nasty.
He's so good that there's no way that he falls to 20. If he does, like by all means, absolutely, you sprint to that freaking podium and you thank 19 teams for passing on him so that he could fall to you. But again, unless a racist tweet comes out, of course, in today's landscape, that's probably not even really frowned upon anymore. If he has a bong rip, well, actually, Sean Payton might trade up for him if a video of a bong rip comes out. I don't know what we're going to do, Pat. I don't know how we can possibly sabotage Tyler Warren's draft stock. But barring something insane happening, he's not gonna fall to 20. Really quick before I give my list, here's what the Broncos were dealing with. And keep in mind, like you had mentioned, the Sean Payton offense, you have to have a reliable pass catching tight end. You have to. And I think the people who were complaining a lot about the Sean Payton play calls, and some of it understandably so, like I get where your gripes are coming from, but really he's got his back against the wall when you have really no viable receiving option at tight end. And that can be another discussion for another day. But here's what they were working with. Adam Troutman, who is your tight end 1, 13 catches, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jesus. That's 11 yards per game. From your tight end number 1, Lucas Kroll, who's, probably tight end 3, or however you're classifying Adkins, but he's a tight end. 19 catches, 152 yards. That is also 11 yards per game. Nate Adkins, who really, Pat, the most usage he got was in the goal line package where they ran that misdirect and then they just kind of dumped it off to Adkins. Maybe arguably your tight end 2 / little H-back, fullback. 14 catches, 115 yards, 3 touchdowns. But that is just under 7 yards per game. And then Dulcich, I guess, technically did.
No, don't talk about
have
Dulcich.
Stats for him. Did he play? Was that so long ago that I forgot that grade? I guess, 5 catches for 28 yards. That's what I have on the stats.
David
and your boy, Michael Burton. Michael Burton was actually like almost as feasible of a pass catcher as we had at tight end. 10 catches, 65 yards, and a touchdown. So
I'm saying
this is as bad as the running back room is. The tight end room was abysmal from a pass catching standpoint. Troutman is a good blocker. Adkins is a good blocker. Kroll is fine. He's willing. But you have to get a guy that can actually be used as a weapon. Like someone that the defensive coordinator on the other team is spending more than 15 seconds discussing. And the extent of what a DC on the other team would do to prepare for this room is like, Hey, just so you know, Adam Troutman's 82. He's a tight end. Lucas Kroll's number 85. He's a tight end. Nate Atkins is like sort of a tight end, but then he's like different things. And so he's number 45. So it's kind of easier to set him apart because his number's not in the 80s. And that's pretty much it. And that was the end of their game plan for the Denver Broncos tight ends. So how do we fill the hole of the tight ends? I'm going to give you one free agent, 30 years old. He's kind of had a little bit of an up and down season, up and down last few years. But I really might like Mike Gesicki. When the Bengals were kind of forced to use him down the stretch, he was one of the Gesicki. He is a little sicky. Again, he would immediately raise the floor of this tight end room. But see, then he's a guy, it's like, if you were going to sign Gesicki, you're drafting a tight end. And that's the thing, like with these first two holes that we're filling, free agency is not going to cut it. There aren't guys good enough in free agency. Like Juwan Johnson is the best free agent tight end for like what the Broncos need.
Right.
And I don't know the kind of salary that he's going to command. And maybe he would take a little bit less to come back with Sean Payton because they spent a few years together. But he's 29 years old. You know, you probably has a few more good years left in him. But again, it's like the free agent running back class. It's slim pickings. So you bring in a Gesicki to, you know, be a reliable pass catcher. He's a decent enough blocker, like good enough of a blocker, but you're double dipping. So the first name that I'm going to give you, and I've seen it in the chat here, we made this list, and so we are not allowing the chat to dictate our answers. Like y'all don't have that kind of control over us. We just like to state that. But Gunnar Helm, absolutely love Gunnar Helm.
God, please.
Can block, is really smooth. I think right now I have Gunnar Helm as my tight end 3. And I had seen someone talk about Fannin Jr. I just don't know what his usage is going to be like. No. He's kind of like Oronde Gadsden, the kid from Syracuse. They're almost more of like a slot receiver, and they're going to spend almost as much time in the slot as they are going to be in line. So in terms of like a true
route that Fannin ran,
it was. Yeah,
that man said.
That looked like the route in that FX show about Aaron Hernandez. The kid, the actor, and bless his heart, but like the actor that played him, he's a fantastic actor and did a really, really good job because that's not an easy role to play. Not an athlete, okay? Not a gifted route runner. That was what that route from Fannin looked like. And someone posted like, someone's going to say that Fannin's not fast. I'm like, Fannin's fast, but this video is not going to help your case.
If you have him run, just run up the seam. Don't stop. Yeah, he's gonna be fast. That man took so long to get out of his breaks. I had enough time to put a cake on the griddle and flip it over before he got out of his break. My goodness.
Painfully slow. Yeah. And again, like it's one clip, so we're not going to put too much stake into that. But something that Nate Jackson, who was a former tight end that we had on the show last week, I asked him straight up, what kind of tight end are you looking for? And he's like, you need a guy that can do both. Like you need, like a George Kittle was the example. I don't think there's a George Kittle in this draft class. There's one George Kittle who is like as good a blocker as a tackle and then a gifted pass catcher. But if you're looking for that kind of player, Gunnar Helm is that kind of player. Like he's nasty in line. He can block. He moves incredibly well for his size. And like you were saying, Pat, like you have to have that tight end that you just trust is going to be there. That can be Gunnar Helm. Now, another guy that I had written down, and his draft stock is going to skyrocket. And I think he's another guy that's going to have a really good combine. And I think more and more people are going to start talking about him. But for now, from what I've seen, he's a little bit under the radar, even though someone in the chat, of course, brought him up. Arroyo out of Miami. Yeah, that dude is a baller. And he's a surprisingly good blocker. Like for typically, like you kind of fall into this trap with tight ends and like scouting tight ends where you kind of just assume that if they're a really good route runner and a really good pass catcher, that they're not a plus blocker. And that's not the case for Helm, and that's not the case for Arroyo, which is why those are the guys that I would be targeting. Now, as it stands currently, I've kind of seen Gunnar Helm mocked like late second, maybe early third. So I think if that's his range, then you're going to have a decision to make on Helm. Arroyo currently, I saw him getting mocked like day 3. I think that's not going to hold strong. Once more people get eyes on this kid, they're going to see that he's one of the better pass catchers in this draft, and he is a very willing blocker. So that is how I am filling that massive gaping hole that is the tight end position.
I wanted to bring something up. Last thing about this tight end position. Like the performance that we got out of this group this year is well below the expectation that Sean Payton has had for his teams, right? I've been looking back. 2009, Jeremy Shockey and David Thomas combined for 925 yards. The next year, Jeremy Shockey and Jimmy Graham combined for 764. The next 3 years, Mario, Jimmy Graham alone over 1,300. Jimmy Graham in 2012, almost 1,000, 982 yards. Jimmy Graham in 13, over 1,200 yards. He wants to target the tight ends. He wants to. That is what he is going for, right?
He couldn't.
He couldn't with the group that he has. That it's going to be it's going to be a position of need in this draft. Do not be shocked if they take 2. Don't be shocked.
And you know what they desperately need out of the tight end too. Like, you need the blocking, you need the pass catcher. For the love of God, please, whoever it is, whether it's a free agent, whether it's in the draft, whether they get another guy from the UFL, which it worked out really well when they went and got Dondre Tillman, so I'm not going to write that off anymore. No. Find a tight end that can break a tackle. For the love of God, I don't think that I saw Adam Troutman, who's a large human being and who throws his body around. It's like he seeks out contact and just wants to deliver hits. I don't think that I saw him break one tackle. I saw Atkins break a couple. He had the slowest spin move of all time when he scored that touchdown against, I think it was Indianapolis. And Lucas Kroll, I was told, was the best player on that roster, but he leaves a little to be desired as well.
So
on top,
so bad,
so
bad.
We're never going to let that down.
The best player
never going to let that down. But for the love of God, Pat, please, not just a good pass catcher, not just a guy that has soft hands, that can run routes, that can be such a focal point of a Sean Payton offense. Break a tackle. You catch a ball in the flat, and it's 3rd and 6, and you have 4 yards to go, break a tackle. Get to that first down. Honestly, we haven't had a tight end that has been like capable of consistently breaking tackles since early years Noah Fant.
Yeah. But even then, like he was okay at breaking tackle. Like even he had his fair share of like, bro, you could have broke that. You're a big motherfucker. Right? Like Julius could break tackles. For sure, but like we have not had that threat for so long, dude, and like it's a pain in the ass because it's another guy. Like think about it like this: it's another guy that the defense has to worry about, right? Like in the run game, what do I always say in the chat? Like I would love design quarterback runs because it's another dude that the defense has to worry about. It's the same thing for tight ends in the passing game. When they know you're going to go to Cortland Sutton, like the majority of the time, do you understand how easy that makes to game plan? Like when you have to worry about 2, 3 guys on from the defensive side, it's like, damn, okay, like we gotta worry about this a little bit. But you have 4 or 5 guys that you have to worry about, legitimate worry. The tight end spot is one of those areas where you can get so much production, and it sucks so bad that we have not had that type of talent here for so long. We need to find that guy because Sean will be able to game plan around it, move his little chess pieces around, and it's just another weapon. We saw what Bo Nix looked like at Oregon, surrounded by decent weapons. Not great.
Meh.
Decent, right? We saw what he could do. He was very efficient. Get that around him. Don't stop trying to tunnel him. Open it up. We got to open up the playbook, and it starts with getting a tight end in there that can do the dirty work and finish after the catch.
To the people that want Sean Payton to open it up, the people that want to see more creative play calling, Pat, can you just look around in there? Can you imagine what Sean Payton could do with a moderately capable pass-catching tight end? One more take that I wanted to read because it was from our beloved Ryan Edwards, and then we'll get out of here. And it's crazy because when I asked this question a couple days ago, I was asking Broncos Country for their hottest takes, right? This seemed like a hot take at the time, but life comes at you fast, and now it doesn't really seem that hot or that crazy. But what Ryan said is Broncos fans are going to war over the next couple of months about which offensive position player the team should draft at 20, and they're probably going to end up picking a defensive tackle. We've heard about Warren. We've heard about Genty. We've heard about Egbuka. I've heard a little bit about Trey Harris. We've heard about a little bit of Omari and Hampton action. Colston Loveland. I agree with Ryan. And as you're seeing this, and taking the last few drafts into consideration, Pat, even before Sean Payton, when the great George Payton was in charge of the drafting, he didn't necessarily care about biggest need. He took the best player on the board. When they took Patrick Surtain, at the time, go look at the roster. They had just signed 2 good free agent corners. Bryce Callahan was still on the roster and was a really good slot corner. They did not need a corner. And thank God Pat Surtain was drafted, because could you imagine what the defense would have looked like without him? When they took Quinn Myers later in that draft, they had Dalton Reisner and Graham Glasgow. Oh yeah. Because there's one guy at a certain radio station who still holds firm to the belief that the Broncos should have drafted Justin Fields, even though Patrick Surtain is going to win fucking Defensive Player of the Year. Those people are just ignoramuses, and you shouldn't listen to them. Anyway, when they took Quinn Myers, Reisner and Graham Glasgow were on the roster. It wasn't an immediate need. Quinn was the best player available at that time. They had taken, the center. Fun story really quick about that. Quinn hadn't played center since high school. The reason that they listed him as a center was basically to sneak him into the Senior Bowl so that they would have a spot. And the only reason that he ended up getting to go to the Senior Bowl is because a dude dropped out at the last second, and he was able to what? Fill that hole. See, everything comes full circle. And then even later in the draft, like they had taken Baron Browning in the 3rd round, they still took Jonathan Cooper in the 7th. Edge wasn't a massive need, but because a guy like Jonathan Cooper was there, he was far and away the best available player. That was what they did. Yeah. And we saw a little bit of it from this last draft. Jonah Ellis, when they took him in the 2nd round, not a massive need, but he was the best player at that point. So I think the reason that this take really has some legs, there are a lot of really good interior defensive linemen in this class, Pat. Yeah. Really, really good. Big boys. You want a guy that can pass rush from the 3 technique, from the nose tackle? We got a guy for that. You want just a big mass of a human being to plug up the run lanes? We got something for that. You want dudes that can do a little bit of everything? We got something for that. So how do you feel about a defensive tackle going at 20? Because if we're really looking at it, Pat, there are 4 or 5 defensive tackles that if they take at 20, I'm very excited about that.
I'm telling you right now.
If TV News, we will do a bricked up segment, okay? Just hang in there.
If Walter Nolan is there at 20,
and
let's say Jainty's gone, Warren's gone, Loveland, Loveland's still on the board.
I don't feel great about Loveland at 20.
With the depth, I mean, that's a conversation for a different time, friend. But even if he was on the board, this is what I'd say. If Walter Nolan is on the board at the same time, Walter Nolan and Zach Allen, that dude's only 20. He's fresh 21.
Dog.
I'm not going to be mad. I'm not going to be mad.
Here's something that I'm going to predict from this interior defensive line class right now, Pat. I think it's well established that like Mason Graham, and we're not talking about edge or like even defensive ends. This is like interior guys. Mason Graham is the cream of this crop as it stands right now. And if what I'm looking at, hold on, what I'm looking at, Mason Graham is projected to be a top 5, top 10 pick. And from what these projections have, there's a pretty decent gap that they have between him and guys like Walter Nolan, Grant, TJ Sanders, Tyleek Williams. I mean, Deion Walker. The list goes on and on. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think as we creep closer to the draft, that gap is going to start closing. Where I think Mason Graham is going to go a little bit later than people think. And the interior D-line 2 through 5, however you have them ranked, are going to start going higher. And I think that's exactly why. And this is a need. It's not a massively pressing need the way that tight end, running back, linebacker, safety, wide receiver are, but it is still a big need.
Our run defense down the stretch was hard to watch at times. We got gashed up a little.
It was very hard to watch in the playoffs, Pat. Their game plan in that game, Pat, was to stop the run. And they still couldn't do it.
They failed miserably. And look, I have
the Bills played bully ball.
I mentioned that like in that list of free agents that the Broncos had, like DJ Jones is one of them. And like in no way, shape, or form do I want DJ Jones not to be on this team. I love the way that dude plays, and he is awesome to watch. But with how Malcolm Roach played this last season, and like him going into a free agent market where he's probably going to get good offers. Like he had trade interest from San Francisco. So we know teams are looking at him. Is he going to get priced out? Like, is the team just going to say, well, this is a deeper class. Like, I think we're okay. You know, like what are they going to say or do in that situation? I don't know, man. It's tough because they look at this talent and they're like, get a cheap cost controlled option, 5 years of cost control option with a Walter Nolan. Sign me up. Like, sign me the fuck up. That would be crazy. That would be crazy. So then you can focus.
Could end up being the best D tackle in this class in 5 years.
Because you're also going to you're probably going to have to throw money at the linebacker position. You're probably going to have to throw money at the safety position. There's some good options in this class. Don't get me wrong. But like, if you really want to upgrade, like Six got bullied in that game. He got exposed bad, right? It's like, love him as a third option. Dog, you literally got game planned on. That was tough, right? So you're probably going to have to throw money at that. Gotta upgrade the interior line while you can. Because we're going to get back to look at the football that we're seeing right now. It's just pound, pound, pound. Like teams are running the fucking ball again, and it's great for the offensive boys, but that means you got to beef up the D-line, and you got to keep it beefed up. You got to be 4, 5, 6 dudes deep at four, 5, 6 dudes deep on the D-line. And that's not even literally that's not even including I would throw in, obviously Franklin Myers and all them are count towards that. But the edge room too, you got to think about those guys. One of those, Benito's got to get paid, right? Zach Allen's got to get paid. You want to keep these dudes around, you got to bring down your costs. Get you a dude that'll be cheap for 5 years. That's all I'm saying.
Before we wrap up, I think it's very important to end the show on a very specific note. Welcome to the greatest segment in all of sports talk, aside from Fill That Hole. Man, Pat, we really do too much for these people. You know, we
Are we
really go
horny?
above and
Are
beyond
we going to
to
horny
bring
now?
the best content to these people. If you're
horny
unfamiliar
down.
with Bricked Up, it's a segment where Pat and I tell you what is getting us rock hard from a sports perspective. Don't be gross, Tammy. Pat, what has you bricked up?
I'll tell you what's got me bricked up right now. It's the fact that my boys Frankie Abbott and Jacob Romano are down there at the Senior Bowl right now, getting it done, providing Broncos country with the clips, interviewing players. God damn, that was awesome to listen to. Y'all are fucking amazing. Keep doing your thing. Yeah, that's what's got me bricked up. I mean, the Senior Bowl in general. The Senior Bowl in general just gets me absolutely bricked up, except for Nagy. God, dude, what a fucking moron that guy was. Anyways, that's what's got me bricked up. Mario, what about you? What's got you rock hard?
Strays. I don't believe it. Well,
What?
I do believe it because I completely agree with you, but
Who's catching strays?
Nagy?
Oh, yeah, Jim. Yeah.
However you pronounce his name. I don't know. It's like he does a good job, but it's like, bro,
Why you gotta act like that?
stop getting in your own way. You're insisting upon yourself. Okay? Stop it.
You just applied to be you just got interviewed to be a GM. Calm down. Relax. Please.
So you has me bricked up. Aside from, of course, the work that Frankie and Jacob are doing, absolutely killing it for Let's Talk Broncos. Really, like, honest to God, the best content that you could possibly find when it comes to Broncos talk. There's nothing that, we don't do. And I assure you that there's no other show out there like Altitude Adjustment. That's just big facts. What has me really bricked up right now, Pat, and it kind of pertains to the Senior Bowl, starting to talk about the draft. I freaking love draft talk. I love watching film. I love reading about these kids. I love doing mock draft after mock draft after mock draft on all of the different platforms and trying to finesse my way into all the different players that I want on this team. And it's also a really good teaching tool of how you learn about guys who are there in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, not guys like Ashton Genty and Tyler Warren, who everybody is talking about and everybody has heard of. I'm talking about guys that are going late in the draft. That's what really has me bricked up. But the best part about this whole process is that the Denver Broncos roster this past year is the worst that it will ever be with Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we get to talk about the draft, Pat, we don't have to worry about offensive line. Now, they might take an offensive lineman at some point, and they should, but it's not a pressing need because they are well established, except at the center position. And they have their quarterback. Can I get a praise the Lord, hallelujah, thank the football gods that finally, for the first time since Peyton Manning, we are not worried about the quarterback position. So we get to talk about maybe taking a running back in the first round, or we get to talk about taking a wide receiver in the first round, or we get to talk about all these different weapons, and they actually have a quarterback to throw to them. No longer do we have to hide in the shadows about how abysmal a targeted wide receiver might be. Like, oh man, it would be great to have that guy, but you know what sucks? Who's going to throw him the ball? Joseph G.D. Nix is who is going to throw that person the ball. So now we get to do all of our draft prep and all of our research, and we don't have to spend one solitary second on the freaking quarterback position, and instead we can talk about the D tackles, we can talk about the tight ends, the running backs, the wide receivers, the safeties, the linebackers, everything. And all of that is going to lead to a better team next year because it will be a better roster next year. We'll have an additional year with Bo Nix, and he is just going to be so much fun. So God bless you, and thank you, Bo Nix, for making this the best Broncos offseason and the most I've ever looked forward to a Broncos offseason in as long as I can remember, because you finally have the guy that you can build around. Now is when it gets really, really fun. And that is what has me.
God. So nice. I'm going to post a mock draft, my first official mock draft next week, and I'm going to throw a quarterback in there for shits and gigs.
And make sure that you tune in next week when Pat and I continue to fill that
hole.
And if you want to know what holes that we are going to fill,
God,
no, you're just going to have to tune in next week and watch me and Pat simultaneously take on the task of filling holes.
This is unbelievable.
This is Altitude Adjustment. We love y'all. Bye-bye.
Hey, Bill, I'm in the mood for a switch up. I hit the function, hit the rose till I hiccup.